Varsity Maine Live, presented by Central Maine Power from the Portland Press Herald. I am Travis Lazarzik, and tonight on the show, I am joined by two of the best in the business among my colleagues in sports journalism here in Maine. We have the best professional wrestler in Maine media with Dave Dyer from the Kennebec Journal and Morning Sentinel, and we have the best Steve Craig in Maine media with Steve Craig from the Portland Press Herald. So, guys, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Now we're
Tough
expecting
competition.
Harry and Jade Haylock from Levitt Golf to be our guest night. They're running a little late. We hope to get them on soon. But in the meantime, guys, we're going to talk about a story that Steve, you had in this morning's Press Herald about fan behavior, and it's gotten to the point where some schools are taking some pretty drastic steps. What can you tell us about this?
Well, the story was kind of initiated in terms of us working on it when the Portland Public Schools announced on Friday that they would only allow Deering High students to go to Deering High games and only allow Portland High students to go to Portland games, and the Casco Bay, with the third high school in the city, they would go where they competed, or if they went somewhere else, they needed a legal guardian. So it's kind of a sort of a red flag. It's like, what happened in a two paragraph letter to their parents. They acknowledged that there were both verbal and physical altercations. Now, we were never able to speak with anyone from within the Portland Public Schools. They deferred and deflected. But there is an October 11th Board of Education meeting where it will be discussed, reported, or supposedly. That's what we were told. But it did get us thinking, this isn't just a Portland problem. Perhaps the altercations were a little more serious there. We really don't know for sure. But there, fan behavior has been an issue for years, right? But the difference that I found from talking to several athletic directors who are quite willing to talk about the subject, because they are trying to do something about it and they do recognize that it's a problem, was that the student behavior was becoming more personal. It was yelling at an individual kid, I don't like your cleats, or you're fat, or, you're, what a bad haircut, or as I heard in a game where it was pretty mild, Yarmouth at Cape Elizabeth, things like, you're short, and calling out kids by name. And the athletic directors are really working hard to try and basically just educate their students that, hey, that's inappropriate. You need to cheer differently. We're not in the pro ranks. We're not in the college ranks. It's a high school education-based event.
Definitely. Is this
How's that for a long-winded answer?
No, it's a great answer. Have you guys seen this personally? I know the worst instance I ever saw was an adult, not a student, and this was at a MCI Bucksport football game. Geez, going back quite a few years now, where an adult fan was yelling for the Bucksport players to hurt MCI's top running back at the time. Oh. And luckily, our photographer at the Morning Sentinel at the time, Michael Siemens, took a picture of the guy. And when I wrote a column about it, Bucksport's principal gave me a call and was like, can you describe him? I'm like, give me your email address. I got one better. And we sent him the picture and they recognized him and they were able to, make sure that he didn't go to any more games, at least that season. But Dave, have you run into anything like this?
I actually ran into a similar situation what you were talking about, Travis, at a Winslow football game. This might have been, about 6-7 years ago. It was a while back. It was Belfast at Winslow, at Pullen Field, Winslow. And a parent, a Winslow player was down, hurt, leg injury. And a parent right behind me from Belfast was saying, I hope it's broken, loudly. I mean, not something that was like whispered to the person next to them. They were saying, I hope it's broken. And I didn't say, I turned right around and I stared. I want to say that I stared the guy down, but I definitely had, kind of the Dwayne Johnson eyebrow raise going on there. It was very strange. I also remember vividly early in my career, back when I was working at the Journal Tribune, Biddeford. It was an Old Orchard Beach Dirigo football game, and a parent was being so belligerent to officials, yelling at officials from the stands, that his own kid had to turn around the sideline and yell to him in the stands to be quiet, which that had to, I imagine, be an embarrassing experience for both of them. So it's I've seen it at basketball games as well, but I feel like most of those experiences that I've honestly seen have kind of come out, that some of those bad aspects have come out in football games for me over the years.
Yeah. Steve, it seems like something to me that the students particularly got to police themselves, don't they?
The- yeah, that seems like that's when it works well, and that's what the athletic directors that I spoke with talked about, was that they're purposely, identifying 10, 12, 15, the number varied, but kids that they know that go to the games all the time and are avid supporters of their friends and the other teams, and they're sitting them down and they're talking to them about it. Biddeford athletic director Dennis Walton said that for him personally, as a Biddeford High grad himself, a former Biddeford High standout athlete, he talked to them about how, this is my town, this is my community, and you're part of the representation of our community, and this is why you need to behave better, as he put it. And I think this quote was in the story. Um, either way, you're going to comply, because that's my job. I'm going to make you comply as the athletic director, but it's a lot easier for all of us if you understand why I'm asking you to comply. And that was kind of a common theme of ADs in both the Western Maine Conference and the Southern Maine Activities Association, recognizing that it did get worse after the pandemic. Kids came back in force. They were excited to be together. They just lacked some social interaction skills, it sounded like. And so they ratcheted up this really kind of personalized chanting of trying to single out individual players, and always at the other team. As one AD said to me, they're not really cheering for their own team. Every cheer they have is directed towards the opponent or the opposing fans. And Walton mentioned that it's like, if you're thinking that the idea is that you're supposed to be the show, that's wrong. The show is supposed to be on the field. But
Definitely.
so I commend these athletic directors that are taking that forward thinking, recognizing we've got an issue. It's not a new issue, but it's getting worse, and let's try and reverse the trend, and actually interacting and communicating with the kids and establishing relationships. And then you do have, as I saw at this Yarmouth at Cape game, I mean, like there was one time there was a tough call that went against Yarmouth, or a non-call, I forget exactly, but a kid blurted something out that sounded like either a vulgarity or something close to it, and one of his peers said, "Whoa, language," and that was the end of it. So we didn't hear any more of that from the rest of the group.
That's
Pretty
good.
effective.
Yeah. Let's go ahead, Dave.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and to put a positive spin on this too, like maybe this gives an opportunity for students to be more creative. You go to a game and you always hear the same chants. Warm the
Right.
bus up. Pick one. You've heard them all. So this gives them a chance to sit down and actually maybe think out some new cheers, some new chants that maybe we haven't heard or thought of before, that puts a more positive spin on it. So it gives a chance for a little more positive creativity.
I think about the one we hear quite often at the basketball tournament when a younger player performs well. He or she is a freshman. That's a great chant. It's like our youngest kid is doing something great, made a big play. So it's positive. It's not using anybody's name, but it's directed towards their own team. And like Yarmouth kids, had a couple of songs similar to what you might hear in a European soccer match, that were very simple, just things like "we are blue and white," or "we are blue, we are white." I forget, whatever, but it was their colors, and that was the extent of the song. But they were doing it in unison. They were all standing. It was kind of cool. I mean, that's good. As the
Definitely.
Cape AD Jeff Thorick said, we want to hear noise. We want them involved. We want them to be passionate. It's just do it the right way.
Well, it's a great story, Steve. Everyone should go to
Thanks.
pressherald.com and check it out. It's something that we will certainly keep our eye on throughout the rest of the school year. We've got the fall to finish and winter and spring still ahead. So it's certainly nothing that's going away.
Yeah, and one AD said to me, this is actually, they're trying to be proactive because they know that the crowds get bigger and more packed in the winter, and usually more vociferous at basketball and ice hockey games. So, they're trying to be proactive in dealing with it, and I think that's a good thing, and hopefully it will work. So
We will see.
and maybe some parents will learn something too.
We hope everybody does. Okay, we now have Athletes of the Week. We will start with Ruth White, Orono Cross Country. She's a junior, and she lowered her own course record while winning the 21st Festival of Champions in Belfast over a field of more than 500 girls. She completed the 5-kilometer course in 17 minutes, 27.15 seconds, a little more than a second faster than her winning time last fall. Dave, you covered the Festival of Champions this year. What did you see, not just from Ruth, but from some of the other competitors as we get to the championship season of the cross country season?
It was a great event, and like you mentioned, Ruth White was basically the story of the day. Obviously, coming in as the defending champ from last year, and she had set the course record previously the year before. It was previously 17:28.46, and she beat that, like you mentioned, over a second. I can't get over this young lady every time I see her run. I've seen her run now for 2 years, going back to the Class C outdoor track championships a couple of years ago, and she's, as you saw in the photo there, she's of smaller stature, but she just bursts out of the gate and early and gets ahead of everyone, and it seems like most of the time she's just running her own race, and when she finishes, she's not even tired. She doesn't look like it looks like she went out for a jog. And in tremendous sportsmanship too. She gets off the course after she finishes, and she's congratulating, she's cheering on other runners. She's getting other runners cups of water. She's cheering on her teammates, and she never makes it about herself after when she's winning races. She's always talking up her teammates, and she's one of those athletes that doesn't just talk the talk; she walks the walk in regards to being a good teammate and just going out there and giving her best and cheering on others, which is quite impressive. She's still obviously beating records, and she still has a whole nother year to go in her high school career. So I'm looking forward to seeing what more she can put out there during that time.
All right, Dave.
Yeah, me too, Dave. I got a chance to see her at the Beach to Beacon High School Mile, which was my first opportunity to see Ruth run. Much smaller field, kind of a low key. I mean, it's kind of a weird event. It's in the sense that it's they get all the pomp and circumstances of a pro event, get their names introduced, but there really aren't that many people there other than the spectators, other than the parents and the runners. But she just went out and dominated, and I'm looking for. I'm expecting to cover the state championships on October 29th, which will be a first for me. I've never done it in Maine, and looking forward to seeing all of the competitors and Ruth as well.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Campbell Cassidy, Edward Little Boys Soccer. He paced the Red Eddies with 3 goals and a win over Messalonskee and 2 goals and an assist in a victory over Oxford Hills. Elsa Goebel-Bain from Monmouth Girls Soccer. She scored 6 goals and a win over Madison, then scored the overtime game-winning goal in a 1-0 victory over Oak Hill. Ashley Connolly from Gorham Girls Soccer. Connolly had a hat trick and a 5-1 win over Deering and an 8-0 win at Westbrook. She scored a pair of goals in the first 2.5 minutes of the game. She's one of those 5 sophomores that's really stepping up for a Gorham team this year that really, graduated 15 people, didn't quite know what to expect coming in. But here they are with the regular season almost over, and they're 10-0 and still very much competitive in a really tough Class A South. Shea Farrell, Mount Ararat football. He's a senior, and he continued to prove he's one of the top players in 8-man football, running for 202 yards and 4 touchdowns on 11 carries. And he returned the opening kickoff 71 yards for a score as the Eagles beat Greeley 38-22. Maya Gale, Deering volleyball. She's a junior outside hitter. She had 14 digs and 4 kills for the Rams in a 3-set victory over Marshwood. Madeline Wagner, Winthrop field hockey. Wagner had 8 goals and 3 victories, including 2 hat tricks and 5 assists. Nick Marion from Wyndham Boys Soccer. He's a junior, and he scored both goals, including the winner in overtime, in a 2-1 victory over South Portland. Noah Carpenter from Levitt football. He completed 12 of 19 passes for 207 yards and 3 touchdowns and ran for 122 yards and 2 scores on 11 carries in the Hornets' win over Lawrence. Eliza Stein from Portland Girls Soccer. She had 2 assists in a 4-0 win over Bonnie Eagle. Then she scored a pair of goals in a 3-0 win over Kennebunk. Jack Moreau from Scarborough Boys Soccer. He's a senior midfielder, and he was a key table setter with 2 assists in the Red Storm's 7-0 win over Marshwood. He also had a goal and 3 assists in a 10-0 win over Massabesic. Steve, you were at that Scarborough Marshwood game. What can you tell us about the Red Storm?
Well, it was probably I would agree with Marchwood coach Ben Deshane. That's probably as good a performance by a high school soccer team that I've seen. They, their passes were either right at feet or right into that big open space where their guy could run onto it and Marshwood's couldn't. And Marshwood is a good team. They had only lost one game previously, and it was 6-0 at the half. The midfield that included Moreau and I think it's Ashton Blanchette were very good. I was very impressed with Parker Killiard, kind of like a right back, maybe defensive midfielder, depending on how you want to describe it, with his ability to place the ball. And then they have just two really top-notch scorers in Kilson Joao and Kilson. If I mispronounce it, I'm sorry. I asked you to pronounce it for me, but I'm still not sure. Joao, and then Will Falona. Uh, they have they have multiple threats, and they have other guys that can score too, and did in that game. And like the girls, Class A South is loaded, and there's a lot of good teams. And but boy, I'll tell you what, after seeing Scarborough, they're going to be really tough to beat. And one thing I noticed about them, they just don't foul. And I don't think it was until probably the 60th minute where Marshwood had a direct kick or a free, like a set piece opportunity where they were in maybe position to score. And a lot of teams rely on those to be able to score. And Scarborough just didn't give them any. They controlled the game that completely.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
We have two. Go ahead. Oh, we have two more. Olivia Varney, MCI girls soccer. She set a new single-season program scoring record in a 10-0 win over Dexter. Varney scored 2 goals and had an assist. And finally, Hayden Whitney from Thornton Academy football. The senior running back needed only 6 carries to rack up 162 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns and a 65-7 win over Bangor. Congratulations to all our athletes of the week. We have polls. You can check these out at varsitymaine.com. These are voted on by sports writers from around the state. This week, we will start with field hockey. No surprise at number 1. It's still Chevrolet, picking up all 6 first-place votes in 60 points, followed by number 2, Skowhegan, with 54 points. Number 3, Biddeford at 47. And tied at 4th is Lawrence, moving in with 36 points, and Scarborough with 36 points. Dave, I think you saw Lawrence recently. What can you tell us about what the Bulldogs are doing?
I did, and I'll tell you what, guys, they're outstanding this year. They're blazing through the Class B North competition. They had a great game last night against Gardner, who was number 4, I believe, entering today in the B North standings. They played to overtime, and Maddie Niles, who's been the leading scorer for Lawrence this season, she's a sophomore, managed to get a wrist shot into the cage with 1.7 seconds to go. Wow. In overtime to give them a 2-1 win. So it was a great game last night. It was the first game all season where Lawrence actually trailed. They were down 1-0 originally early in the game, and then Hope Bouchard tied the game 1-1 in the third quarter with a goal, and then eventually went to overtime and now scored the game winner. They've been rather dominant all season. They've had some close ones with Gardner, obviously Belfast, but they've held their own. They're nationally ranked now in the Max Preps national rankings. They are, I believe it was, if I remember correctly, it was number 22 in the national rankings. So they're being noticed on the national scene as well. They're going at it. They want to make up for that loss in the regional final last year against Old Town, and they're just full speed ahead as far as the season goes.
Well, now I want a Lawrence Chevrolet game just because you've talked him up so much. Let's get that. Make it happen, Dave. Make it happen. Okay. Boys soccer. Scarborough.
A Lawrence Egan game first, right?
Yeah, we should get that.
They're
only
first,
15 miles apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Boys soccer. Scarborough's number 1 again. 7 first place votes. All the first place votes with 70 points. Number 2, Edward Little with 58 points. Number 3, Deering with 56. Number 4, Cape Elizabeth with 50, and number 5, Gorham at 36. Steve, Cape Elizabeth just snapped Yarmouth's very long win streak, didn't they?
Yeah, I think it was 31 games. And, talking about national rankings, Yarmouth came in as the 13th ranked team, I think, in the country. according to one poll, the United Soccer Coaches Association poll. But now Cape Elizabeth tied them in the season opener and beat them really pretty decisively. It was 3-0. They scored early. They scored early in the second period half, and then they scored one late and controlled the game most of the way. So Ben Raymond's got a team that's playing well together and seems to be getting better as the season goes on. So, don't count out Yarmouth. That would be a mistake. They're just have a championship pedigree, but
Right.
and who knows? They might like for once playing as the underdog once it gets to the
Yeah,
playoffs.
it's
But
been a while. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, Cape was solid. They were very good.
Okay. Thank you. Girls soccer poll, number 1, Scarborough with 6 first place votes and 68 points. Number 2 is Gorham picking up a first place vote and 62 points. Number 3, Cape Elizabeth with 56 points. Number 4, Mount Blue now with 46 points. And number 5, Brunswick with 41. Dave, big game in Class A North, I think tomorrow night between number 4, Mount Blue, and number 5, Brunswick.
Yeah, it should be a great game too. Mount Blue, I've seen Mount Blue earlier, or about a week or so ago, and it's a veteran squad. It's a team that's very used to one another. Talking to players after the game, played a long time together. KK Daggett's been the top player for the Cougars this season. She actually just broke the single season record for goals scored. I think she notched her 20th goal, which is what set the new mark for Mount Blue. They've just been a team. You can tell when they're playing that they can find each other easy. They're I don't know if they're on the same wavelength as far as finding each other on the field. Good crisp passes, good shooting. I got to think, and obviously Brunswick, a great program as well. It should be a good matchup.
All right. Thank you. Finally, football. Oxford Hills still number 1 with 7 first place votes and 79 points. Number 2, Levitt, first place, 1 first place vote and 70 points, followed by number 3, Skowhegan at 66, 4, Thornton Academy at 57, and number 5, Wyndham at 36. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm doing my poll, after I get through like 1, 2, 3, I'm having a tough time with it this year. Just so many teams are either even or not playing up to what they've done in the past, or what. I mean, I'm finding like 2 or 3 teams I'm taking in and out of the poll every week. How about you guys?
Dave, you want to go first?
Yeah, I know. For me, Oxford Hills, Levitt, and Skowhegan are the top 3 that jump out as far as consistency goes on how the season has gone. But I'm with you guys. After the first 3, I mean, you start, your brain starts getting clogged. You start going, okay, well, what if this team matched up against this team, and what does this loss counts against this loss? It's been wild. It's been wild, and I'm not sure. You guys might know this better than me in reaching back and thinking about this. I can't remember a season like this in some time where it's kind of more parity on the scene, not necessarily guaranteed victories here and there. It's been wild, and it's been entertaining. That's the best part. I think we've all gotten our money's worth as far as the season's gone so far.
Yeah, on that point, I think the interclass games, we wrote about it last week, are doing what they were supposed to do. Those games have a significantly, I should have dug this out. If you bear with me, I probably could. But those games have a significantly less point differential than the non-interclass games. To give you some stats here, last week, for instance, the interclass games, the point differential was 17.3 points. There were only 6 of them last week. The smaller class division won 4 of those games. They now lead the season series 21-15 over the larger class team. And the non-interclass 11-man games last week, the point differential was 28 points. So 11 points more in the ones where you're playing somebody within your class. So that has added some definite interest for me, because though you've created, just as they were intended to do, more competitive games. And then you're getting a team, like say a Thornton Academy this year, which I still think is clearly the 4th best team. And by the end of the year, we'll probably have them either 1 or 2, maybe 3 if Levitt runs the table. I mean, I've got basically the exact same top 4 as what's in the poll. But then you're right. For me, it's the top 4 really hasn't changed the last couple of weeks. I just know Thornton, they really are a powerful program. They've played a very tough schedule. Their losses are to Oxford Hills, and a good team out of New Hampshire. So,
Yeah.
you know.
And they'll play Skowhegan in a couple weeks, so we'll see.
Yeah.
how
So
good
you know,
this
if you
Skowhegan.
can beat some, hey, well, then great. You know, and I don't think Thornton is as explosive and dynamic as they were, say, 2018, 2019, and even and last season. But
Well, and Steve, you bring up a good point too with the New Hampshire games. I think that has possibly thrown a team or two off their track a little bit. Thornton being possibly one of those teams where it kind of that small shakeup, that small kind of thing, kind of can
right,
throw a team off at least for a week or two. Maybe.
exactly. Instead of say having uh, Edward Little or Lewiston, who are both improved this year, good for them. But say instead of having Edward Little or Lewiston in that week 3 matchup, they had to play a team that was their equal. Instead of Marshwood when they started 1-3, instead of maybe in week 2 or whatever, whenever they played, didn't they have to play somebody? They end up having to play 3 Class A teams. Now they beat Bonnie Eagle, who is still in the top 10, and
Right.
Marshwood isn't, which speaks to the whole craziness. But Marshwood's 2-3, so do they deserve to be in the top 10? I don't know. I don't think I put them in the top 10. But, and then I was all impressed with Massabesic, and then they got hammered by Scarborough, got hammered by Lewiston, and then Lewiston, didn't play well the next week, and it's been very entertaining, very unpredictable, and and I think maybe some of these teams that we expect to be strong year in and year out, just they've had some significant graduation losses. Certainly, Thornton falls into that group. Marshwood doesn't have a lot of seniors on their team this year, and their best player has been hurt since early in the season. So, there's reasons. I'm sure every team that's maybe what we might say underperformed, if you dug deep, you could find some certain reasons. But the good thing is that we've got all sorts of teams with 2 and 3 wins after 5 weeks, and like 2 of the teams that haven't won yet, Noble and Gorham, they play each other this week.
Right.
So one of those is going to have a win, just like last week, Deering and Brunswick played each other. So somebody was going to get a win.
Right. That's a good way to segue into games to watch. One we touched on just a few minutes ago, the girls soccer game between Mount Blue and Brunswick. I think tomorrow night's going to be a great one. And then a football game that I've got tomorrow night, Biddeford at South Portland in Class B South. Wrote about it in today's high school football notebook. Class B South has 4 teams, 3-2, 2 teams that are 2 and 3, and you can make the argument that those 2 and 3 teams, Marshwood and Portland, might be the best of the bunch who have just played tough schedules, and they play this weekend also. So, some big games in Class B South, and that region might finally start to shake itself out. Dave, what are you looking forward to?
I got an interclass matchup. Actually, this is one of the first things that sticks out to me. I think might be a decent one is Gardner at Oceanside. 2 teams that are 3-2. Gardner had won 3 in a row before they came back to earth last week against Skowhegan, so they're looking to get back on the winning track. Oceanside's been a fairly solid team all season, battling in C North there, and I know Aiden Sargent's been solid back on the ground for them. I think that could be a decent matchup. Gardner wants to strike balance offensively between its run game with Colton Doobie, but also its pass game with Wyatt Chadwick, get short, quick passes going. Kind of give the receivers room to run and get some yards after catch, if you will. And also in Class D, I like Freeport against Winthrop, Monmouth, Halldale. I think that'll be a pretty solid matchup between those 2 squads too.
Yeah. Excellent use of yak, Dave. Steve, how about you?
Well, the game I'm covering tomorrow night is Wyndham at Thornton Academy. So here again, there's Wyndham 2 weeks ago. Wyndham started the year very strong, and despite graduating a lot of people, and it's like, wow, Wyndham's really good this year. Then they lose at Coney kind of decisively. So one that surprised me. But then now last week against Falmouth, a team that had played really well the week before, Wyndham's defense stood up, and it sounded like they played great. So Wyndham's 4-1, I believe. They're in very good shape, and they're a team that over a long period of time is used to playing Thornton Academy. I think this could be a game that tells us a lot about both teams, regardless of who wins, right? If it's a close competitive game and Wyndham hangs in the whole time, then maybe, we've got to say, hey, Wyndham's definitely still a contender in B North. I think they are. Um, and if Thornton maybe, puts up a 4 or 5 touchdown win, then it might be time to say, well, I think any little road bumps that Thornton encountered are done now, and they should be in good shape going forward. So who knows? And conversely, if Wyndham wins by 4 touchdowns, then I don't know what I'll make of that, frankly.
All right. I'd like to remind everybody you can check out all the best high school sports coverage in Maine at varsitymaine.com, pressherald.com, centralmaine.com, sunjournal.com, and forecaster.com. Thanks for joining us tonight on Varsity Maine Live. For Dave, for Steve, I'm Travis. We'll catch you next time.